What's going on, guilty guys and gals? Welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Adventures. Today we will find out what the adventure of the clouded Kokoro means. But first, Metroid Dread. I just finished the game yesterday. Absolutely brilliant, in my personal opinion. My Metroid sort of like adventures are kind of weird. I've never played 1, 2, or their remakes. I just played Metroid Fusion first on the Game Boy, and then I went back to play Super Metroid a couple times, and now, of course, Metroid Dread. Super Metroid was my favorite of the two I had played, and Dread is very Super Metroid-like. It's like a combination, or as you might say, a fusion of the two games I'd played so far, which was perfect. It basically gave me everything I liked about the two of them, as well as a kick-ass final boss fight. It's really good. If you like Metroid and you were like, but it's 2D, just try it. It's good. If you wanted more Super Metroid, try it out. Also, I wish they could credit people properly, but we'll not go into that. Oh, right. Languidly. Hey, he kind of pronounced it the same way I did. I have to turn this up so I can hear them. Isn't that always the case? What? Who's that?
The young lady collapsed on the pavement along Briar Road, and to the knife in her back. Lit in the soft glow of gas lamps, a most extraordinary scene had been set. And under the cover of the night fog, the curtain had risen silently on the insoluble mystery of our invisible killer.
Are we not solving the mystery of the burned carriage? Is that just the end of that? Well, we're back here in Clockland. I don't remember the voice I gave to this man. Oh, but I remember her. Did you sleep last night, Mr. Naruhodo? I clinked my teeth together. Ow. No, not at all. It was an enormous hotel, wasn't it? The rooms were so luxurious. It felt like we were staying in a palace. And with all the gaslights twinkling, it was brighter than day, even in the middle of the night. What about the enormous beds? After my time on the SS Buria, I wasn't going to waste a single inch of that space. I spent the entire night rolling from one side of the mattress to the other. Oh yes, it really was the sort of night you can only dream of normally. Except, when I learned that we owed £3 for the rooms, that dream quickly turned into a nightmare. Oops, sorry about that. The building was so impressive, and the entrance so inviting, I wandered in without thinking. In a lodging house in Japan, that sum of money would put a roof over your head for a whole year. I did try, but I'm afraid I couldn't help my tears when we were presented with the bill. I really am sorry. Well, never mind. We must find some more affordable lodging straight away, though. Or if we're not careful, our entire stipend will be used up in 10 days or less. Ugh, London is a scary place. True. Good morning to you at this early hour. Oh, yes, well... Good morning to you, Lord Chief Justice. We've come to report on the outcome of the trial at the Old Bailey yesterday. Susato-san is amazing. She doesn't bat an eyelid, even in the presence of the imposing Lord Strongheart. Yes, I believe you had a very comprehensive initiation into British courtroom practices. Oh, yes, it was very, eye-opening. Thank you. And, in accordance with your instructions, Lord Strongheart, Mr. Naruhodo performed his duty to the end. Yes, I've already been apprised of the events.
You conducted a remarkable defense, and you may consider the test passed. Oh! No longer are you a student from the Empire of Japan. You may henceforth claim to be a fully fledged lawyer.
Where do you get all those birds, anyway?
My country is delighted to welcome young talent from such a remote eastern land.
Thank you very much. So, I'm a lawyer now.
Now, in view of your new appointment, I have a fresh case in mind for you. I'd like you to take it on at once. I trust that won't be a problem.
Another case? Already?
Nothing trains a lawyer better than practical experience. I'm sure I don't sense dissatisfaction, do I?
It's just that yesterday's trial ended unusually. I haven't quite come to terms with it.
What's to come to terms with? The man was cleared. What more were you hoping for?
Well, the thing started on fire.
The culpability of the defendant has not at present time been established by this court. Consequently, the jury will not be required to prefer judgment.
Well, Lord Van Zyx, it's been a pleasure, so it has.
I'm glad I don't have to do this voice anymore. It's hard to remember.
And as for you, my dear fella, I couldn't have asked for a better defense.
The clapping. It's a bit much, don't you think?
I just can't help wondering if Mr. McGilded really was innocent. Mr. Naruto, it's just that I never managed to ascertain the truth. And then the trial ended.
Well, you needn't let it trouble you for a second longer.
Sorry? What do you mean, Lord Strongheart?
Magnus Begilded passed away immediately following the trial.
No! What? Mr. McGilded is dead? The birds.
Anybody who shouts in here gets birds. I have 19 minutes and 41 seconds until my next engagement. Time enough to talk. Okay.
I don't understand. What happened? How can he be dead?
After the trial concluded yesterday, there was a great commotion in the Old Bailey. As you presumably recall, an omnibus had been wheeled into the courtroom.
Yes, of course. That was the scene of the crime which Mr. McGilded had been accused of.
Precisely. Well, while the bailiff's attention was diverted by some other matter, the omnibus went up in flames.
No. How could such a thing could happen?
That is being investigated as we speak, but already. The police have identified a corpse found inside the charred shell of the carriage as that of McGilded.
That's awful.
The man must have slipped inside whilst the bailiff's attention was elsewhere.
That bailiff really needs to pay more attention. What's his name, Mike Meekins? And how could that have happened?
That is also being investigated as we speak.
Okay. Thinking back now, immediately after the trial, Mr. McGilded did mention going back into the courtroom to look at the omnibus. Well, I must be making tracks now. 'Tis time for the inspection. Sorry, what inspection? They're coming to examine the omnibus again, so I'm told. I asked if I could be present for it myself.
I will miss the yous and the myselfs. An inspection of the omnibus? Not to my knowledge. I don't believe Scotland Yard had any intention of re-examining that carriage.
But then who was Mr. McGilded talking about?
Never mind that now. The Yard is making a thorough investigation. This matter is no longer any concern of yours. Leave it to the police.
Poor Mr. McGilded. He's a Mr. McMurderer. Don't worry about it.
So, how did you find your first taste of our country's Supreme Court? Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, it was... wow.
Mr. Naruhodo means to say the whole experience was steeped in the solemnity of Britain's long history. It's really a world apart from our own judicial system in Japan, which is only a few short decades old.
Wow, Susato-san has such a way with words.
And you seem to have a way of failing to find the right ones.
Stop reading my mind! Those are in my head! The judicial system here is the most advanced in the world. Learn all you can. We put pyrotechnics in the court. It's truly advanced.
The most advanced in the world, is it?
Yes, and we launch the fireworks, and if the building starts on fire, there are gas lamps everywhere to feed it, so it will consume the whole city. It was fortunate that your very first trial was a simple affair.
Simple? That was simple?
As I believe I mentioned yesterday morning, it was a trial you couldn't lose.
I don't mean to be a contrarian, Lord Strongheart, but that case was anything but simple.
The circumstances of the case were so incriminating. I was stunned when I first heard them. In fact, I'm still finding it hard to believe that we managed to get a favorable verdict. Is something funny? No, my apologies. However, the fact is that you did receive the not guilty verdict you set out to achieve. It was a simple defense because you couldn't lose because McGill had rigged everything, Naruhodo. McGill had rigged everything, that's why. That's what he's saying. And that can only be attributed to exceptional talent. Wouldn't you agree? Well, I don't know about that. Alright, well then I'm leaving. Well, never mind. You exceeded my expectations, I'll freely admit. That much is at least an undeniable truth. Which is precisely why I've prepared the new case for you that I mentioned before. What's going on? What was he going to say before? Also, why does he have, like, stripy Elekid patterns on his sleeves? Is that fashionable?
Could you perhaps give us some more details about the new case you mentioned?
Don't tell me. It's a murder, and the trial starts in 10 minutes. Don't worry. It's nothing so alarming or quite so urgent as your last assignment. Can everybody read my mind? In fact, this case is completely different. Oh, I see. Did he just read my mind? That's what I'm saying. That is to say, no one has died, as of yet. And the trial will not be today. There is plenty of time to research the case thoroughly. Yay, a real investigation segment! 23 hours, 43 minutes, and 18 seconds to be precise. I added that, but it feels like something you'd say. So the trial's tomorrow then.
Is everything all right?
Oh, yes. I'm just a little confused, that's all. Yesterday's trial was... well, it's left me wondering if I'm really cut out for being a lawyer.
Oh, Mr. Naruhodo.
I don't know if I could face standing in that courtroom again after Mr. McGilded's trial. Ah, yes, I nearly forgot. There was one similarity with yesterday's case. Once again, there is currently no one to advocate for the defense. Oh? If the situation remains unchanged, the trial will start tomorrow with the defendant unrepresented. And if that happens, I need not remind you of the inevitable outcome.
The most terrible end awaits the defendant.
Yes, that's right. Ugh, here we go again. Why do all these cases pop up, day after day? How could that be possible? Your time is up. You will have to excuse me. There's no way that was 19 minutes. I would advise you to begin making preparations for tomorrow's trial. After all, the clock is ever ticking. Why are you obsessed with clocks so much? There is now but 23 hours, 26 minutes, and 39 seconds until the court sits. Last time he mentioned the 23 hours, he said there was plenty of time. And one more thing. Mr. Naruhodo. I forgot. He says his name wrong. Mr. Naruhodo, there is something I should like to ask you. Oh, what's that? Yesterday you remarked upon something. That you intend to see through the will of your late compatriot, Mr. Asogi. Yeah, I would be interested to hear what exactly you mean by that. Inside 34 seconds. Oh, well, Kazuma always used to say, you see, that he wanted to learn how the greatest justice system in the world worked so he could change ours back in Japan. Now that he's gone, I'd like to work towards that myself. And there's another thing. Oh? Another thing? Continue. On the way here, on the steamship, he said something to me. There's something... there's something very important that I have to do. Something very important? And what exactly would that be? He never had a chance to tell me. I suppose he would have if he ever made it to Great Britain. You're out of time. Well, thank you for your enlightening discussion.
Mr. Naruhodo, what's all that about? Mr. Asogi never once mentioned anything of the sort to me.
I urge you both to focus your attentions on the matter at hand. Oh my god, it's that guy that was in the courtroom. I've taken the liberty of summoning the police inspector in charge of the case. He'll be able to apprise you of the details.
How long has he been there?
He was hiding inside the suit of armor. I don't know why he does that. Anyways, I wish you the best of luck and bid you farewell. Is he holding fries? What is he holding?
There's something very important that I have to do. Kazuma-sama, what did you mean? I wish I knew, but honestly, he never told me. Anyway, we'd better talk to the detective, don't you think? He's looking at us kind of weirdly. Yes, you're right. I hope I'm just imagining it, but I wouldn't say he looks pleased to see us at all.
What's his name going to be? Fish and Chips?
Is this some kind of clock? Actually, I think we might be inside some sort of giant clock. But those gears are larger than anything you'd find on a steam locomotive, even. It's eerie. Do you think clocks are some sort of hobby of his? The Lord Chief Justice, I mean. Well, boys do enjoy fiddling around with machines, don't they? This is you with your books, and I'm not sure you could fiddle with cogs that size, and I'm certain you wouldn't call him a boy. Still, it's amazing how little noise the cogs make, considering how large they are. There's actually something quite soothing about their precise rhythm.
I've got a clock in my room right now. We found it when we were unpacking some stuff. I don't think you can hear it in the videos. I don't think the mic picks it up. But if I go completely silent, maybe... Probably just hear the TV in the living room. Check the suit of armor.
Look at these menacing metal giants facing each other across the room. I believe they're suits of armor. Oh, right. I thought maybe they were like the lion dogs we have in Japan guarding shrine gates. No, not at all. In fact, in Europe, suits of armor like these are always possessed by evil spirits, you know. And they roam around in the middle of the night. Really? Is there nothing you don't know, Mr. Sato? This book tells me everything I need to know about everything. If you're ever unsure, just ask. Where did she get that incredible tome?
They roam around at night. Yeah, very funny. I didn't even know I could... Okay.
Just look at all the naughty books packed together on these shelves. They go from floor to ceiling.
They do not. Unless there's an invisible ceiling we can't see.
And they're all books that you couldn't hope to come by in Japan. It's like a dream. Yes, a very bad dream. They're not all about British law, either. There are books about the judicial systems of other Western nations. France, Germany, Spain, Holland, Virginia.
What about Russia?
Why do you ask?
I was wondering about asking the Lord Chief Justice how you say wardrobe in Russian. What do you think?
I think perhaps it's a thought best abandoned.
Why would you even want to know that? So wait, how do I do this again? I do this, okay. Why can't I look down the halls? That's pretty unnecessary, but I guess they just drew them and were like, damn it, they don't fit on the screen. Whatever. He is holding fish and chips. And he's eating them very quickly. They like regenerate. It's magical. Could we trouble you? What do you think? Lovely weather, isn't it? What's the weather got to do with anything? Listen to me, you young Japanese upstart. Some frippery about the weather doesn't get every English gent eating out of your hand, you know. Ugh, but Susanna-san told me it was foolproof. Why does he eat like that? I'm a busy man, a very busy man. There's a crime scene to investigate, but I'm here having to give the likes of you a talking to. Oh, I'm ever so sorry. Can you imagine what the other officers there will be saying, Haven't seen Gregson anywhere, have you? No, he's too busy with the bigwigs these days. It's all because of some bumpkin who's here on a jaunt from a country I never even heard of. You've never heard of Japan? Haven't we been trading with your country for like hundreds of years? Whatever. Hear that ripping sound? That's my reputation at the yard going to tatters. Are you sure it's not you ripping that newspaper? There's no need to rip us apart as well.
I don't believe we've been introduced. This is Mr. Ryunsuke Naruhodo, a defense lawyer.
Eh?
It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I'm Mr. Naruhodo's judicial assistant. It's lovely weather we're having today, isn't it?
It is unseasonably fine, I grant you. London winters don't see a lot of sunshine. Unbelievable! How did she pull that off? It's because she's a pretty girl, Ryunsuke. So, Lord Stronghort's tasked me to fill you in on the case. The name's Tobias Gregson. Inspector Gregson to you. I'm from Scotland Yard. Tobias Gregson. That just seems like a regular name. Unless this is a reference to a Sherlock Holmes character, I don't remember.
Gregson? Inspector Gregson?
What's the matter with Susato-san? Does this detective's name mean something to her?
Inspector, are you perhaps the Inspector Gregson?
You're acting like you know this guy, Miss Susato, but he's a London detective.
Oh, I do know him very well, in fact.
Very well?
Yes, he features prominently in the adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
Apparently he does. I don't remember. Oh, in that publication. What's it called again? Ranst Magazine?
That's right. Inspector Gregson and Mr. Sholmes enjoy a wonderful friendly rivalry.
Really? Really? You? The rival to great Mr. Sholmes? That's incredible. Well, I don't know about that. Mr. Sholmes isn't a professional like myself, of course, but he does come up with the goods from time to time.
Mr. Sholmes is equally complimentary about you, Inspector, isn't he? You earned his highest praise. Gregson's the pick of the bad lot of all the Scotland Yarders. Those were his own words.
That's his highest praise?
Well, Mr. Sholmes isn't particularly known for giving compliments, you see.
No, he is not. And thanks to that magazine, my name's known all over London town now. That's great, isn't it? I have to admit that to start with, I was a little, well, flattered by all the attention. Everyone wanted to shake me hand, and my reputation at the yard went through the roof. Well, then that's wonderful. No, it's not. There's nothing more sinister than a man on the street. People are always looking at me now. They're whispering rumours about me under their breath, I'm sure. Rumours?
Are you quite sure?
He's changed since he started appearing in those stories. Fame's gone to his head, stuff like that.
Gosh, do you really think people are saying such mean-spirited things about you?
Like I said, they whisper, so I can't catch exactly what they're saying, but I know what folk are like. I'm sure that's what they're saying. Sure as eggs are eggs. Sure as eggs is eggs.
Oh.
I get the feeling this detective could be very hard work.
Oh dear. Perhaps a sudden rise to fame does change people.
Not the way you were thinking though, right?
So, about the case that Lord Chief Justice mentioned before.
Nothing to tell you, really.
Where did you put those?
As far as we're concerned at the Yard, it couldn't be simpler.
Oh dear. That probably means that as far as we're concerned as lawyers, it couldn't be more complicated. I wish you were wrong about that, but I have a nasty feeling you're right.
A young woman was walking along the pavement on Briar Road when she was stabbed from behind. Fortunately, it wasn't fatal, but she's still laid up in the hospital unconscious.
That's despicable! What sort of coward would attack a poor woman from behind? I suppose you would have finished whoever it was off with a Susato takedown, wouldn't you? That's neither here nor there, Mr. Naruhodo. Brace yourself, Ryusuke. You've angered her now. I gotta get a wide stance to make sure she can't throw it.
Anyway, after something of a whirlwind investigation, the criminal's been arrested. I barely had time for a cup of tea after the incident took place, to be honest.
So, there must have been something left at the scene that led you directly to the culprit. Or perhaps a reliable witness who recognized the person in question?
Let me stop you right there. You're wasting your time on this one.
Sorry?
There's nothing you can do. There's no way to help the bloke now.
Why ever not?
Simple. Prosecutor that's been assigned to the trial tomorrow is Lord Barak von Zeitz.
No!
Sounds like you heard of him then.
Oh yes, we're very familiar with Lord Van Zeitz. Believed to be the harbinger of death itself. The Reaper of the Bailey. Lord Barak Van Zeitz, who we faced in court only yesterday. Mr. McGilded told us about him before the trial, didn't he? I am still back here. When Van Zeitz stands for the prosecution, they call the accused his sacrificial lambs. And in every single trial in which he's been the prosecutor, the accused has been damned. This Reaper of the Bailey nickname, I suppose he's earned that because every defendant he advocates against is found guilty. Is that it? Well, if that's the case, we should inform you, Inspector, that in yesterday's trial against Van Zeitz, Mr. Naruhodo secured a verdict of not guilty.
And what of it?
Oh? Well, I think that means that even against the Reaper of the Bailey, it's not impossible to save the defendant.
No, I really don't have a clue, do you?
What do you mean?
What happened to that bloke in the end, eh?
He's dead.
Magnus McGilded came a cropper.
Came a cropper? What?
In that omnibus when he went up in flames. So you can't rightly say you saved the defendant, can you?
What are you saying?
Look, if Van Zeitz could get the dirt to stick on everyone, he'd be a miracle worker. But that's not how it goes. He doesn't work miracles, he works magic. Black magic. I'd have a good long think about that if I were you.
Are we really supposed to believe that?
He's a vampire, I tell you. Stake in the heart would kill him, but of course that would be illegal.
I drank wrong. Okay, I'm good.
Right, well, I filled you in as requested, and I'm very nearly out of chips. So, I'll be headed back to the crime scene now. We're still carrying out a few investigations there.
It was Briar Road, you said, didn't you? Where the incident took place?
That's correct, ma'am. And if you head over to the holding cells, you can meet the criminal himself.
You've branded him a criminal already?
He's as good as. Shaking like a leaf in his cell he is. It'll give you a chuckle if nothing else. He's inmate 53. Speak to the jailer and he'll show you the way.
Inmate 53. Thank you.
What is the jailer's elegy going to be in this one?
So there's no helping anyone against the Reaper of the Bailey, they say. Is something troubling you, Mr. Naruhodo? To tell the truth, when I recall the trial yesterday, I can't stop myself from shaking. The idea of facing the Reaper in court again is... Well, if you think it's too much for you, there's no shame in turning the case down. That takes courage, too. But if the man they've arrested is innocent, you could well imagine he'd be shaking like a leaf in his cell. And I, for one, wouldn't find the sight of that funny. So, if I'm honest, I'm still reeling from the shock of yesterday's events myself. And I'm really not sure if I'll be able to help this man, whoever he is. But I'd like to try, so I think I'm going to make some inquiries. Will you help? Did you really think you had to ask? After all, I'm your judicial assistant. Thank you. So then, shall we? Yes! Let's go!
Dum, 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 dum. Prison. Let's go to prison. Woohoo! Oh. There's no bailiff to talk to. Like, there's no guard in the back that we can investigate.
So these are British prison cells. Oh, they're ghastly. It feels just like a dungeon. Yes, and having experienced it in Japan myself, I can assure you that our wooden cells feel a lot cozier than these cold stone walls. Oh, don't, Mr. Naruhodo. You're making it seem even worse. Apparently, our client's in this cell here. Is he the Candle? But it's so dark at the back there, I can't make him out. I wonder what he's like.
Inmate 53, your legal representative is here to see you. Stop idling in the back of the cell and show your face at once.
Am I a cat, as yet with no name? Calling me by a number. It's utterly, unbelievably, unjustably unreasonable. I refuse to answer. Mr. Naruhodo, what? What do you think is going on here? I have no idea, but I wasn't just hearing things, was I? That tirade of complaints was in Japanese.
Oh, interesting. Why does he look familiar? I don't know. Oh. I think I remember reading something about this. Anyway.
Shh, quiet.
I don't have to do a British accent for this guy. Great.
They're all around, hiding. I know they are. They're watching, listening. Even now, I can sense it. Right. So, could I ask you who exactly... There you are. You've come to curse me, haven't you? Don't try to hide it. You're a ghost. A ghost? Oh, man, not one of these types. We mean you no harm, prisoner-san. Are you... Japanese, by any chance? They have Japanese ghosts here, too? This is insane. This is... Oh, beyond my wildest dreams. Forgive me for that outburst before. I'm so sorry. Oh, it's fine. We were just a little surprised, that's all. Imagine it.
It's been 12 long months since I left my hometown, and here I am, in a frightful fix in a foreign land. So hearing the sweet, sentimental tones of a compatriot's voice here in this damn dark hellhole was a most monumentally moving moment.
Did you just dab? Who could have guessed that this new client Lord Strongheart assigned to us would turn out to be a fellow Japanese?
What compassion my fellow countrymen show. To dispatch a first-class lawyer all the way from Japan to defend a mere foreign student. Noble, nurturing, never failing, Nippon.
Now he's definitely dabbing. A first-class lawyer? Oh dear. I think there's been something of a misunderstanding here. I wonder, would you be so kind as to tell us what happened? Why you've been detained as a suspect, for example.
Yes, I can, I will. Shan't stay sullen and silent.
I'm not quite sure I understand what he means, but seems happy. Yes, he does. I just hope he actually has a good reason to be. Thank you for your cooperation. I am a lawyer, as you said. My name is Ryunsuke Naruhodo. And I'm Naruhodo-san's judicial assistant, Susato Mikotoba.
I am a visiting student sent here by our government. Notably, notoriously, named Natsume. Soseki Natsume.
Okay. Soseki Natsume-san? What an unusual name.
Call me Soseki, please. I'm a poet, you see, a writer of haiku. It's something of a nom de plume.
A nom de plume? You mean an alias? That's right, Naruhodo-san. I don't know why he's speaking...
No, don't be so prosaic. It's much more refined than that.
And haiku, that really reminds me of home. Did I hear you say that you were a visiting student sent over here by the government?
Yes, that's right. A year ago I was told to go and study English. First I had to suffer that misery, and now this is beyond the pale.
Suffer that misery? Did you not want to study here?
No, I mean, I've actually had an interest in Great Britain for some years, of course.
Oh.
But just because the government tells you to do something, does it mean you can do it? No.
What do you mean?
They told me that if they told me to study English literature, that I could have understood. That's my field. But no, they told me to study the English language. Utterly, unbelievably, unjustly, unreasonable.
I see.
Only the other day, I was told to send a report about my first year here. I tendered a blank piece of paper. Wise words on white wash.
You must be a man of great standing.
Oh yes, so I'm often told.
And often like to be told, it would seem. Could you perhaps tell us exactly why you've been arrested, Soseki-san?
I didn't do it. I didn't commit that atrocious murder.
Murder?
No. No. It's all right. The woman didn't actually die, did she? But she was stabbed with a knife right before my eyes.
Before your eyes? You mean you saw the attacker?
I didn't see anyone.
What?
If I had seen the person who did it, do you think I'd be locked up in here?
Oh dear, it seems this case is becoming rather complicated.
Why me? Why did that silly woman have to be stabbed in front of me? It's the curse of London. It's incredibly, inexcusably, irritatingly inconvenient.
So Soseki-san was there at the scene, but he didn't see the attacker, not his attacker. It's vital that we find out more about the case.
It was an accursed evening, just after the snow had started to clear and with heavy the fog.
And heavy with fog.
I'd been to the bookshop to buy some books, and I was on my way back home to my accursed lodgings.
Sure the bookshop wasn't accursed too?
and as I was walking along that accursed pavement, I could make out the sole silhouette of another ahead of me. A woman wearing a green overcoat she was, and just as when I went to overtake her, she suddenly let out a little scream and collapsed on the cold hard slabs of stone at my feet. Oh. Oh, jeez.
How terrible.
I called out to the woman, but she didn't move. It was like a ghostly, ghoulish, grim graveyard.
Slight exaggeration there, perhaps.
Well, he is a poet. I was terrified. I had to get away from there. So I ran as fast as my legs would carry me back to my accursed lodgings.
That's not good.
They'll say it was shameful, I know, to run away like that.
Tell me, Soseki-san, was the victim an acquaintance of yours?
Don't be ridiculous. Do you think I know of any of these fair-haired English, and a young woman at that? I'm indifferent, shy, timid, unsure. I can't talk to people.
I see. A young woman unknown to Soseki-san. And at the time it happened, who else did you see nearby? Did anybody pass you?
Regrettably, apart from myself and the woman, I didn't see a soul.
No one? Oh, great. So the victim was unknown to you, and there was nobody else on the street at the time. Was it perhaps a particular barber who was good at knife throwing? That creates something of a conundrum, doesn't it?
What conundrum? What do you mean, what conundrum? Conundrum.
What do you mean, Susato-san? What's the conundrum? Well, if what Soseki-san has just told us is true, there's something I can't explain. He says he didn't know the victim, and that there was no one else around at the scene. Then, he apparently fled without having been seen.
I did.
But if that's the case, surely this man has to be the culprit.
What did you just say?
Nothing. I didn't say anything. Oops. Perhaps I thought that a little too loudly.
Seriously, everybody can read your mind. Either that or you just whisper things to yourself, Naruto.
Actually, that's not what was troubling me. What I was thinking was, how did Soseki-san actually come to be arrested? Sorry? He didn't touch the victim. There was nobody at the scene to see him. So how did the police ever discover he was there in the first place?
What, did you drop like a monogrammed handkerchief, or did the victim just identify you?
Oh, yes, she's right.
It was him. That accursed great detective. He led the police right to me. Of all the bad luck.
Accursed great detective. Could it be...
I shall never forget that man's name as long as I live. With his haughty laugh and his self-proclaimed greatness. Brash, big-headed, busybody, begone! May you be cursed until the end of your days, Hairlock Sholmes.
I knew it. Mr. Sholmes?
Hairlock Sholmes.
Well, I didn't expect to hear that name from this man's lips, that's for sure.
It was the morning after that nightmare had unfolded on the pavement before me. I was gnawing on a sliver of hard cheese when some men suddenly burst through the door. They started shouting at me, "This is the police! Put the weapon down!" Yes, it was a thin silver, and yes, it was hard, but I wasn't eating a weapon. Oh, sliver. Disgusting. Dietary discrimination, devils!
You clearly had a trying morning yesterday.
And there he was, in the middle of all the policemen, grinning like a Cheshire cat. That Hairlock Sholmes?
It's actually just Herlock Sholmes. He's English.
What do you mean he's English? We're in London. I've never seen another Japanese person here. That's why I was so excited when you came by. Anyway, I've since found out that he's a famous name in detection here in London.
Yes, the great detective is really well known.
I guess he could be like, what, German is what that probably was originally supposed to insinuate. But I don't know. How does he not... How is he struggling with English if he understand German? Anyway... And his overly sharp mind managed to deduce my whereabouts, apparently. Yeah, he thinks I'm the knife-wielding madman. Me, this weak, stooped kitten of a man. I wonder what great deduction process led him to his conclusion this time.
Do you mean to say
That Mr. Sholmes...
that Mr. Sholmes' deduction was the only reason the police arrested you? That would be really most unreasonable.
Well, the thing is, I was thrown into a panic when they barged their way in.
Of course you were. That's only natural.
I was terrified and trembling, and they kept throwing question after question at me in impossible English. Fiendish, foreign, flim flammery. Well, we are in England. You can't really blame them for questioning you in English. Good point. But my mind went blank. I knew I had to answer, but I didn't know what to say. So I just kept repeating things like, yes, I do, and I'm fine. The next thing I knew, I was in manacles, and before I knew it, I was thrown in here.
Oh dear. I'm afraid that's hardly surprising.
I'm fine? He's not fine now. Wow, good observation. Mr. Naruhodo, Esquire? Oh, you can just call me Naruhodo. And when we're speaking English, a simple Mr. is more than enough. Oh, yes, all right, yes. They've really got me. This country is poisoning my mind. But please, I beg you to defend me in court tomorrow. You can tell them what really happened. You'll do it, won't you? Well, Why? Why is it so hard to say yes to me? Well, the thing is, I'm just a student like yourself on a study tour. A student? I've defended a case in the Old Bailey. Only the one, though. But at this moment in time, I really don't know what I'm supposed to believe in. I'm confused about what justice in this country even means.
Oh, Naruhodo-san.
I'm not even a foreign student who was supposed to be here. I'm a sort of locum lawyer, I suppose. But that armband, that's the mark of a defense lawyer from our great empire. It's a keepsake from the man who should have been here. He was my best friend. A keepsake? I know exactly what they're saying about me.
Oh? Who do you mean?
The lawyers. All the British defense lawyers. They wouldn't defend me.
Goodness, why do you say that?
For the same reason as you noted before. When it happened, there was only the victim and myself around, and I ran away from the scene of the crime. I'm not a fool. I know it looks as though I must be the culprit. It must be very hard for you, Soseki-san. And anyway, I'm a student from overseas. I'm just a foreign nobody to them, someone not to be trusted. I heard them openly laughing about me before, in my earshot without any compunction at all. Any trial for this man would be a waste of time, they said, and of course the foreigner did it. They even had the gall to say, the man doesn't understand half of what's being said anyway. That's awful. And they're wrong. I've studied more English than half of the policemen out there on the streets. I've traveled halfway around the world to learn about these people's country and its great history. But no one here wants to listen to a man with a strange accent. They all hate me. So, at the very least, I'd like to entrust my fate to someone who can listen to me in my native tongue. You could do it, couldn't you? When I look into your eyes, I can see it. I can see what you've been through. Soseki-san, it's just that... Give me a little time, please. Huh? I'll do what I can, for the time being. Oh, what do you mean?
We shall investigate the case as thoroughly as possible. If we can find some clues, it'll give us a much better chance, I'm sure of it.
Oh, yes. I'll be here, all alone, waiting for you, locum student Mr. Naruhodo, Esquire.
We should be going then, Naruhodo-san. We have a case to prepare for.
What is this music? Doesn't sound particularly sad, you know? I can't even examine the cell. Well, let's go check the crime scene and then we'll end the video. I bet you hair-locked Sholmes is going to be here for sure. I wonder what the pun was originally. Shorelock, perhaps? Look, Bobbies and a snowman. William Robbins. Huh. So this is where it happened. Briar Road.
Look, Mr. Naruhodo. Look at that regulation metal helmet. It's unmistakable. The men of Scotland Yard are here. They're investigating as we speak.
That is their job, you know.
But Mr. Naruhodo, to see one with my own eyes. They're often depicted in the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, but I never imagined I'd come this close. Ooh, to a real Bobby's helmet.
What? The helmet?
Of course. I have to try one on one day.
Well, I hope your Hattie dream comes true. Alright. Why'd you have to come down here? What's the Japanese delegation doing here?
Oh, Inspector Gregson.
This ain't one of the tourist trail, and I'm fairly sure you're well aware.
Yes, of course. We're here to investigate.
So you've been to the holding cells, then? What do you make of the criminal?
He's not a criminal, as you put it, Inspector. He's a suspect.
Well, see about that. You Japanese like to stick together, I suppose. Okay, sure. Well, do what you will, and don't bother me. The bloke's in court tomorrow, whatever happens, and the verdict's a foregone conclusion. Ugh, the stone-cold air of rejection.
Take heart. London at this time of year is full of stone-cold air.
That makes it worse somehow. Well, I guess they're going to talk to me then, great.
Tell me about Scotland Yard, Inspector. Ever since I read about it in the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, I've been fascinated by the place.
The Yard. It's the most sophisticated policing organisation you'll find anywhere in the world, ma'am.
Oh, and you know I've always dreamt of wearing a real Bobby's helmet.
It does make them look the part, seeing that policeman there with his helmet on. You certainly get the sense that this is a man who will take no nonsense in his duty of protecting the city.
Oh yes, doesn't he look wonderful?
I'll tell him you said that. Being a London Bobby's hard going, I can tell you.
Oh, really?
First thing in the morning, you know what he does? Goes round and rouses all the labourers on his beat so they can get off for work. What? He wakes people up? Yep, raps on the windows with a long pole. Did it myself going back a bit. Is that a real thing? That's so silly. But you know, they didn't have an alarm clock, so...
I had no idea.
The Bobby works for the people of the town. It's just another one of his duties. After that, he starts tirelessly patrolling the streets all day long. He has to cover 20 miles a day. That's the regulation distance. I can't really imagine how far that is, but it sounds like a long way.
Let me see. 20 miles? That's approximately the distance from Tokyo to Yokohama.
On foot? That's definitely taking things a step too far. Wink? You know, I don't like puns. You're not going to get any good in my good graces by doing puns, alright? And when it gets dark, of course, he has the important job of lighting all the gas street lamps.
Oh my.
And I suppose in between all those duties, Bobbies are expected to investigate cases as well?
And chase after criminals trying to evade the law.
I'm not sure you could call it in between exactly. More alongside, but yeah. They're expected to handle those jobs as well. We do have men keeling over from time to time, I admit.
Maybe you should, like, delegate a little bit, you know? Like, have the waking up and the gas lighter people do one job, and then the policeman can do the police work. I've always dreamt of wearing one of those helmets, as I said. But it's with a heavy heart that I shall have to relinquish that dream to you, Mr. Naruhodo.
Your heavy heart will be my heavy head if you do. Like, seriously. Come on. You're telling me, like, there's probably rampant unemployment in London at this point. Give a guy, like, a couple pence to light the lanterns in your city. Can't be that hard. I cannot believe. I totally believe it's true, but, like, figuratively, I can't believe that they would do all that. No wonder no crimes ever got solved. Like, maybe, like, lighting the lanterns on your way as you do your beat? Sure. But seems pretty distracting. What are you going to do if a criminal runs past you while you got a giant-ass pole that you're knocking on windows with? And what happens if there's a crime in the area while he's doing that? Who wakes the people up then? It happened at around 5 in the evening 2 days ago, just there on that open bit of pavement. The victim, a young woman, stabbed with a blade from behind. Is it right that the lady is still unconscious now? You mentioned she's being treated in the hospital. I never said she was a lady. Truth is, unless she comes around pretty smartish, we won't be able to find out much about her at all. I suppose that means they haven't been able to take a statement from her either. Here's a map of the local area I happen to have on me. You can take it if you want. Really? Are you sure? It's yard policy to give lawyers defending suspects the odd bit of information to go on. I haven't actually accepted the job yet, but still.
Thank you, Inspector. We gratefully accept.
I'll put some chips in there earlier. I hope it's not too many stains. Anyway, as far as we know, there's no one else on the scene other than the victim and your fellow countrymen. So, who did it, you think? Not much of a head scratcher, ain't it?
Well, I know Mr. Natsume was also claiming not to have seen anyone else around, but just because he didn't see anyone, it doesn't mean we can be so sure that nobody else was present.
I'm sorry to have to tell you, but we most certainly can be sure.
How?
Because, ma'am, the precise moment of the stabbing didn't go unnoticed.
What?
We have 2 very reliable witnesses, no less. It was a typical foggy London day, and your client obviously didn't see him.
There were witnesses now?
But it was foggy, so I'm sure they...
Who are these witnesses, Inspector?
Fellow and his wife, and the man's the one most reliable and respected citizens in all in London. One of the most. He's a copper from Scotland Yard.
A policeman? That might change things. And this policeman just happened to be there at the exact moment the woman was attacked?
Nothing peculiar about that, ma'am. Part and parcel of being a bobby. Catching and banging the act and all that.
Do you think it might be possible for us to ask that policeman a few questions?
Be my guest. You can ask him what you like. In court tomorrow. Oh, I've no doubt he'll be summoned as a witness. So that'll give you something to look forward to.
That's that then. He's got no intention of letting us meet the man beforehand, it seems. A policeman witnessed the incident. As your judicial assistant, I must warn you that this could make our job very difficult indeed. Yes, as a non-judicial assistant, I could have warned me of that too. Oh yes, one more thing, Inspector.
What?
The person who led you to the suspect. I hear that was Mr. Herlock Sholmes.
What are you bringing him up for?
Was it something I said? The color has drained from his cheeks.
That twitchy Japanese bloke goes on trial tomorrow. Are you going to defend him or not?
Well,
Makes no difference to me, but I'll just say this. No London lawyer worth his salt would touch that case with a barge pole.
because the prosecution is being handled by the Reaper the Bailey, you mean?
There's no way to save the man now. It's a waste of time trying.
What a great legal system.
It is a bit strange, though.
Sorry?
The Reaper. He hasn't appeared in court once for a good few years now.
Yes, we did hear something to that effect.
And the only people he usually bothers with are the real scum. The master criminals, the violent ones.
Master criminals? The violent ones?
That's right. He handpicks his victims, only deals with those guaranteed to go to the gallows for their sins.
But Mr. Natsume wouldn't hang for what he's accused of, surely.
That's just my point, sunshine. Yeah, the young woman was stabbed, but it didn't kill her. You couldn't even say the intent was there. So this isn't the sort of case I'd be expecting the Reaper to want to sing his teeth into, for want of a better phrase.
They're really putting in the vampire stuff, huh? Well, it's not exactly a minor infraction, is it?
People get stabbed all the time. No, there's got to be more to it. Some reason he's taken interest.
Really? What sort of reason, Inspector?
You think I can tell you what's going on inside the head of that Lord of Darkness? You'll have to ask him yourself. Tomorrow's trial.
Are we really going to have to face the Reaper again? The Lord of Darkness, as he put it?
Aye, pretty intimidating name, ain't it? Make you quiver in your boots, it will. Who'd you hear that name from?
Oh, well, it was Mr. Natsume who mentioned it. He said that Mr. Sholmes was with the police when they entered his lodgings. I'm sure it was the result of one of Mr. Holmes' inspirational great deductions.
Fiddle faddle!
Ah.
The man's an amateur, and I'm getting sick and tired of him showing his mug up everywhere. Oh, I don't know where he gets his information from, but he turns up at the scene of a crime, wanders around spouting incomprehensible rubbish, and before you know it, he claims to have solved the case.
Yes, he's quite astounding, isn't he? He is a great help to Scotland Yard, though, isn't he?
Gibble gobble.
Ah!
Ever seen this before?
Oh, yes, that's the Ranst magazine. This wonderful publication in which the adventures of Sherlock Sholmes appears.
Yes, well, that wonderful publication, as you put it, sees fit to include several of the Yard's detectives in its stories. And the so-called great detective makes a mockery of all of us. If you ask anyone at the Yard, it's a misadventure to be included in any Sherlock Sholmes tale at all.
Well, I suppose there is an element of that.
We work our socks off, every one of us, only to be frumped by the public thanks to that obnoxious detective. The man's as dangerous to a Scotland Yard as he is to all those criminals.
That can't really be true, can it, Inspector?
Grrr.
Clearly the great detective and the police have a complex relationship. He's kind of like a vigilante, like a superhero. Well, I don't think we're going to get any more useful information out of the detective.
That's right, I'm not giving you nothing.
Mr. Naruto, can I make a suggestion? Oh, yes, what is it? Well, it seems to me that we must speak with him about this. By him, do you mean Mr. Sholmes? Yes, Mr. Sherlock Sholmes, exactly. Look at those shining eyes. You can't wait, can you? Well, Mr. Natsume did blame Mr. Sholmes for all this, didn't he? Yes, he did. He really did. Which makes him an involved party in the case. Are you just going to ignore that? I hope not. I assure you, it's not simply my selfish desire to meet with Mr. Sholmes again. The trouble is, we have no idea of the man's address, even. Baker Street! How do you know that? It's in the stories, of course. 221B Baker Street, the most famous address in the world. Oh, I see. Well, there's nothing to stop us from going, I suppose. We'd better try to find our way there before Susato-san gets any more excited and unpredictable. Hurrah! I'll summon a carriage!
So we're to have a reunion already. With the great detective, Mr. Herlock Sholmes. No, you're not going to see Herlock Sholmes, are you? I just told you how much I hate that guy. Hey, where are you going? No, get back here. Where are you going? Oh, fish and chips. Gibble gabble. I love that. I like doing this guy's voice. It's like Bruce Fairplay again. Except, not. Also, he gets to stick around for longer. I imagine, anyway. I don't know what's up with the fish and chips thing, but whatever. It's probably a new thing at the time, right? Get a little obsessed with them, I can't blame you. Anyway, that's the end of the episode. I hope you all did enjoy. Me, myself, always interesting to meet new faces. Make sure to like the video and subscribe. It's for the betterment of the city, probably. I don't know. Something like that. And I guess I'll see you tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Definitely not tomorrow. That would be well, actually, yes, but you won't see me, because it'll be something else. Probably Straw 2 tier lists on the stream tomorrow. Okay? It's getting kind of awkward, so I'm just going to turn around now, and we'll talk with you in court or something. Okay, bye!